Alrighty, everybody. I am here with Frank Pileggi of Pileggi Painting. Frank, I appreciate you coming on today. Let's start with just a little bit of background on who you are. You've been doing this for quite a while now, so maybe just take us back to the beginning and kind of walk us through the journey
Yeah,
of your business.
I can do that. Thanks for having me on, Garrett. Frank Pileggi, Pileggi Painting. I started Pileggi Painting when I was 32 years old. So we probably have to go way back to figure out like, okay, this 32-year-old just started a painting company without knowing how to paint.
Let's do that.
That's really not correct. I mean, because that's what I did. But when I was young, 12 to 16 years, 12 years old, I was mowing lawns. I was one of those kids that always had to work and always worked and always liked to work. And maybe that's kind of where my entrepreneurial ship started, and kind of how I taught my kids how to do, that if you need money, you have to go to work, not to dad. And that's kind of how I was raised. So I was mowing lawns from 12 to 16, got in high school, and I learned one summer, I went to work for a high school teacher and I learned how to paint. And I worked for him for a full year painting, learning how to paint, learning the industry from a one man high school painting contractor that would just do it in the summer. And then the next summer, me and two buddies did it on our own. And so I painted, mowed lawns with two other guys from high school through college every summer. So then graduated from college, got a straight commission sales job representing motivational speakers and sales trainers and entertainers for corporate events and training. So that's my background. And then fast forward to 32 years old, I'm representing professional speakers and trainers and educators for corporate conferences. And September 11th, attacks hit. All sales conferences, all incentive conferences, done, just
Hmm.
completely zeroed out. Probably not as bad as that industry was hit during COVID, where you couldn't even leave your house to, let alone go into a hotel. So I had three young boys at home and a wife, and I needed money. So I had a friend of mine that lived up the street from me that was in sales, straight commission sales, and was in a similar situation. So him and I started a lawn company, and then a few months later started a painting company. He ran the lawn company, I ran the painting company, and that's how we started. We actually started as a company called Pileggi and Reed. His last name was Reed, and that's where it all started in 2004.
Hmm. I mean, there's definitely a bunch of interesting themes there. I think the early start is foundational for a lot of trades business owners, that high
Yeah,
school lawn and landscaping business foundation. I've just seen it over and over again, how that just kind of sparks the entrepreneurial spirit early on. It teaches you the value of hard work. I'm curious, during that period where before you sort of went all in on the painting, did you have sort of an inkling or a passion to get out of the current job and go into the entrepreneurial? What was
I
that like?
I did at that time, and from 22 years old to 32 years old, when I was working in that industry, I listened to the best authors and speakers on customer service, on sales, on marketing. And so there was always this one speaker that said, if you could be of service, you will always have a job. And if you could be of great service, you could always own a company.
Mm,
And so that's kind of where I went from there. And then when we started the painting and lawn service, I kept my other job for probably a year and a half. So during lunch, at the end of the day, I was mowing, I was painting. It was hard back then when you were kind of in halfway to have a great crew. And that's what took a bit to get started. But knowing what I knew when I was younger and what I learned from 22 to years old from all these great professional trainers and speakers on the customer service part of side and the sales and the marketing. I knew what I was doing when I entered the industry. I just needed to figure out how to build teams.
mm. I was
And that,
I just finished up a conversation with Luke Looney, who's he owns Good Boy Epoxy,
yeah,
and we were talking about that exact same thing where it's like when you're in the trades, you kind of can understand the tactical bits of it, you know what to do, and ultimately the hardest part becomes building a team. So we'll put a pin in that. We'll get to that later.
For
I want to
sure.
talk about sort of the jump into entrepreneurship. So a lot of times people have sort of these golden handcuffs where you're making a great living at your job, but you have this passion to do something else. Sounds like it was maybe a little different for you where the industry was in a weird place. So you kind of had this forcing function and a need to go and do something else. But I'm curious, when was the moment where you decided, okay, I can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I need to make the full jump.
There was one of my friend's dads who owned a HVAC company, and we were all out one night, and he happened to be there, and he looked at me and he said, "Pileggi, you look really tired." I said, "I am. I'm working 3 jobs." He goes, "Well, tell me about it." And so I told him about it, and he said, "When your sales and your side job equal what you're bringing in on your regular job," he goes, "it's time to go full force." He goes, "Are you there?" I'm like, "I'm there." And so the next day I quit my other job and went all in. And that's basically how it started.
Hmm.
Of going all in where I couldn't do, I mean, there was not enough hours in the day to do it all anymore. And that's where you had to take the risk of just going, okay, I trust myself. I trust what I've built. It's short term in the last year and a half of the new business. Let's just go for it. And that's when we went for it, which creates a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of, anxiety on cash flow and working because it's hard to even get a line of credit from a bank when you need one the most, and when you don't need one like now, it's easy to get it. It should be, that world should be opposite, where we went to the bank and got turned down for I think a $30,000 line of credit.
Mm,
And so then you're just all in, and which kind of probably made it better because you were forced to actually make the cash flow work.
right. Well,
And that's one of the hardest parts about starting is cash flow.
absolutely. And I'd have to imagine the stress of having the kids as well and the family that, when you're young and you're John and I's age, it's a little bit easier to take these risks. But I'd have to imagine that sort of lit the fire for you to have those completely
Yes.
long hour days.
Yeah, and probably it's for if you're giving advice to any entrepreneur, it's better to do it when you're 24, 25 years old, and you're, especially if you're single, not married, no kids. You could live on a lot less, where we were forced to at a certain dollar amount where you had to make.
Right. So looking at it now, kind of explain where you're at today in terms of the company size, employee count, and then we'll kind of contrast that from the early
I mean,
days.
when you start, I was on a ladder with guys. I had 2 or 3 guys painting. We had 2 or 3 guys mowing, and then it takes time to build a team, and we ended up, I had like 3 guys painting. I was on a ladder, and then you also have to figure out when to get off the ladder and just go be a business owner in sales and marketing. I was doing all of that now, but I didn't have my other side jobs to do. I was just focused on painting, which we painted, and I had certain hours of the day where I would go do bids and do the business part of it, but I was still part of the painting team for probably 3 years, and then got off the ladder and did more of the business side of just the painting. And that's kind of where it started coming together. I had a couple guys on one crew, I found some guys on another crew. And then, I mean, the story of finding a team and trying to get guys is, people to do the job that you need to be done when you're not there babysitting. So that took a bit, but once we had that, then we just built off that group and just kept building a team bigger and bigger. So, you had 3 guys, and then 3 turned into 5, got rid of the guys that were not pulling their weight and not doing the job, not perfect, but just not doing the job to where, our clients were completely satisfied, and then got rid of them and then kept the other guys. And so we went to a group of probably 10 painters with one main manager on it, and that got to be too much for that one main guy. And then so what I did with him, he created with underneath him, we created 3 new teams. And so, because he couldn't manage all 10 guys and all the jobs and me giving him all the jobs. So, what I did was broke up the 10 into three different teams. And we still exist that way with five different teams.
Mm,
Same guys, same deal. And then they're in charge of who's underneath them, is how we built the team and the process. So we had one guy in charge of nine others, and then we had three guys in charge of two, and then we built from there. And
right.
that worked the best when we built teams instead of one big team trying to tackle lots of jobs and splitting up. We just said, okay, now you're in charge of this, and then I would just get the jobs organized for the guys, and the guys did all the painting.
Mm. How do you know when to get off the ladder? You mentioned that is if you're talking to somebody who's in that exact spot that you were, what's your advice of when to say, all right, no more time on the ladder,
Yeah, because
focus.
you got to get off the ladder, you got to get off the mower, you got to get off, you got to get off, the plumbing, you got to get off of everything and just be as my manager and more of a, I turned into more of a sales and marketing customer service person than, literally a painter. And that's what you have to do. And the timing of that is, kind of when you can't keep up with all of it and you're almost forced to show up at somebody's house to do a bid and you look like you just got off the ladder. And that's where a lot of my competition it was and is still. And so when I changed that, then that was the game changer of getting off the ladder.
Mm,
But you have to stay on the ladder for years. It was more of a financial thing. And then again, it's the same leap of faith you took before. Like, okay, do I trust these guys to be here every day? And do we know each other enough to figure that out? And at the time we did.
hmm.
And so
Yeah,
I wasn't nervous about getting off the ladder. And as much as I was nervous about going all in, because
right.
I was confident in who I had at the time. And I also had more time to check up on him during the day at specific jobs.
Yeah. I mean, I think
So, I mean, your
that's,
timing of that just is, it's kind of all on feel and where you are at the time, and you're maxed out, and you need to, then you become a time management, person where you just have to manage your time and have certain hours of the day specific to different things inside your business to do.
mhm. I'm curious how you think about team formation, and I just have continued to see it come up over and over again where the way you structure the team is kind of the key to having that excellent product where every trades business owner agrees and admits that the most important part is having a great final product, and they
Yeah.
believe that as the owner, but it's how do you distill that to the 15th guy on your team who you don't really know that well. I'm curious how you kind of think about team formation and how that impacts having an excellent product.
Well, I mean, I think when you form a team, whether you're, even if you form a grade school soccer team, you have to have some leaders on the team. And not everyone wants to be a leader, and not everyone's born to be a leader, and not everyone wants to teach themselves how to be a leader. So you pick the guys to run the team that are leaders, and everybody else is a follower. And to get the last guy to do as good as job as your head guys and that you would do is just a matter of patience and taking time to work with them and failing on jobs to where, Garrett, if we worked at your house, um, and this is where my quality comes in of how to do it is I would call you afterwards. I might not have been there when the guys finished at your house and say, Garrett, how's everything look? Here's your total. And you're like, hey, Frank, everything looks great, but everything looks great, but. And so I had to convey to the guys, let's get rid of the buts.
Mm,
And the buts were a lot of not cleaning up, not being nice, not being courteous to people's times. We're in 90% of the times we're in people's houses or offices. I don't do new construction. So it's not like we don't have an open house and we just come and go as we please. We gotta be, cognizant of people's pets, kids, hours of when they're, taking kids back and forth to school, when we can get in, when we can get out of the house. So it was basically getting rid of the butts of when we have to go back to a house, when we're done, Mike, we already packed up, left your house, Garrett. Now I got to go get guys off of another job that we just started and come back to you. So it was explaining to them that that costs money for everybody except for you, the homeowner. We're not charging you to come back because we're coming back to clean up and to touch up, where we could have done that while we were there if we were more, you know, aware of the surroundings in your house and having it look like it was when we got there. And that just takes time and patience working with the guys of that, explaining them, nobody's perfect, but now we have to go back to Garrett's house and finish. And we're losing money when we're doing that. Not just me, you guys are losing money too. And that's the way we kind of put it, that we're all in this together. I'm just not going to lose money over it. You guys are too. So let's go back, and you're basically working for free. We all are. And that's
Right.
kind of how it is. But building a team, you just have to find the leaders. And you know what? That's really not hard to find once you get on it. Same with when you walk on a field, you could tell who's a leader. You could throw a ball out to a bunch of 16-year-old boys or girls and tell them to pick a team, and you'll find out in 5 minutes who your leader is.
Hmm. That is true. I like the get rid of the butts. That's a short thing that you can remember, but it perfectly sort of captures the whole point of look around, make sure everything is good, and then look for the butts so that you can get rid of them before they become an issue.
And communicate with the homeowner.
Yeah.
Hey, we're done in an hour. Everything look good? And you would be like, yes, everything looks great. Can you clean this up there? Can you touch up this? Are you guys picking up the trash or leaving it? Yeah, we're taking it all with us. Little things of communicating with homeowners when they're home. And, that was the best way to learn that to perfection was during COVID, where everyone was at home. So we didn't have to
Mm.
wait to come home from work to inspect our work that we thought was that we were done with. You were just there. So since then, rarely have to go back and do a cleanup. Maybe there's a touch up here and there, but no buts. The butts are gone. You know, and so and none of my guys are perfect, and I'm not either. With all that said, we got rid of 90% of the butts.
That's great. It's very interesting. I didn't think about how COVID would impact that. It's fascinating. How do you think you operate differently now compared to maybe not right when you started, but sort of 5 years in, you've got your footing, you feel like you're, a true entrepreneur. How do you kind of think about how you operate differently, if at all? And we've talked a little bit about focusing more on sales and marketing, but anything else in terms of, just pure operations, how you move differently and hopefully obviously better than you
Well,
used to?
yeah, I think that comes with doing so many different jobs inside the industry of, you know, repairing sheetrock to not being able to repair it before, knowing how to bid different things. And as you learn all these different ways to do jobs, you learn within your industry how to be better and how to make more money while you're in there. So, and also you could kind of I operate a lot easier now, and I know a lot more ways to make money at your house, and even talk about it with you. What I did at another house, like, hey, you're like, can you come over at 10 o'clock to my house? No, I'm doing a bid at a commercial job down in KC but I could do it at 11. I didn't need to say that. I could said I'd do it at 11, but it's kind of like people name dropping. I'm dropping what we do to you without you knowing that. And you're like, oh, I have an office also. It's in Overland Park. Do you work out here? Or hey, we just got done doing a job where we're scraping ceilings and doing popcorn removal, and it was just so dusty that, sorry, it looked like this a little bit. I was just at a house. Oh my God, you guys do that? I didn't know that. And so when you work at somebody's house, they just think that you do what you do. Like if I came in and painted your inside of your house and I didn't tell you that I painted outside or did this with inside the house, then you start creating experiences within your company of what you do. And then you build a walking network team within that, meaning I have a floor guy, I have an electrician, I have a handyman, I have interior designers, I have color coordinators, I have paint stores that all market me because I market them and we're friends and we know that if I introduce you to my floor guy, he's going to do a great job. and you're going to hire them 9 out of 10 times. And so you create kind of a walking marketing team within that. And so that's kind of how you build your whole network within your network. And that's how you operate different in your 10th year than you did at your first year, because I didn't know all those trades.
Mm,
I didn't know a framer, guys that frames houses until now. Now if somebody refers, somebody asked me for that, I could do that. 5 minutes ago on my phone, somebody asked me for a sheetrock person. My guys do sheetrock better than most sheetrock companies, so I'm going to tell them that I do it. I know him. I've never worked at his house, but I will now.
right. Yeah.
And that's kind of
I
where you operate different, is through experiences in my industry, in the service industry.
Absolutely. I was just talking on the last episode about this, where when you think about networking, it's oftentimes you think sort of the white collar jobs of, hey, if you're a financial
Yeah.
advisor, you got to have your network, you got to be on LinkedIn doing all these things. But it's really, immensely valuable and arguably, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the more valuable things you can have as a trades business owner. Not necessarily in terms of the customer network, but all the things surrounding and sort of the sales funnels that you can get from working with certain people, all of that stuff. So
And that's
just
one of the most important part of the service industry, is to create a network of people that are basically marketing your company every day. People are out marketing my company right now. I don't even know about it. And it has nothing to do with me paying anyone any money or any kickbacks or referrals. We just plug each other's trade when you're necessary. And when your clients trust you inside their house, they're going to trust your friends of your network that you have to work inside their house as well.
hmm I'm curious what advice you would give to the younger version of yourself if you're going back to, and we'll start at that 31, that point where you made the jump. What advice would you give yourself at that point?
I would give, well, one is, in your business plan, if you think it's going to take you 3 years to hit a number or 5 years to hit a number, know that that's probably not correct. That it's probably going to take you longer to do that. So to have more patience in getting to your numbers. And so finally, I would just like, you think you're going to hit a certain number, sales number, which turns out to be a profitable number in 2 shorter years. And so then my strategy was, let's just grow after the, first to second year and second to third year is huge growth, 30, 40, 50%. Then after that, you got to be like, okay, to control this and still give good customer service, we're going to increase 20% each year. And then you kind of get to a point where, you know, that number is good, or you got to keep going, 3%, 5%, 10%. But that's kind of where it is. I mean, so the advice would be patience. It takes more time. And then another one would be, if you have a partner, because I don't have a partner now, and then that only lasted 7 or 8 years, is to really evaluate if you need a partner. And if you do need a partner, make sure you do two different things within the company, and you're not basically competing against your
Mm,
partner. And that's kind of where we failed as partnerships. We were doing the same thing, basically selling and marketing and managing guys. And my partner wasn't pulling the same weight that I thought he should with me compared to what I was doing.
mm.
And then, so that's two different forms of advice I would give to a young entrepreneur, that if you are going to have a partner, really evaluate who that is and what your duties are within the company.
That's fantastic advice. I do want to ask about, in terms of patience, there's kind of this balancing act that you have to play. And this is something I struggle with, where you do want to have that motivation of, hey, we want to double our business this year,
Yeah.
um, while also still admitting that it's probably going to take longer. And do you just have any thoughts on, like, how do you balance that, where you want to have the motivation to keep going and you want to have a lofty goal, so you give it all you got, but you also still want to not sort of be disappointed by that or understand that it might take a longer. I mean, how do you kind of balance that?
Sometimes if you increase sales by not so much, let's say 40%, but like, let's say 20% of more qualified quality jobs, that would give you more jobs in the future. So you're not really accepting every job and not really desperate to do every job that might not be your niche, and you're going outside your niche and failing just to hit your number. So you want to stay with what you do, and sometimes the quality of the jobs and those clients that provide those jobs are better than hitting a bigger number. And sometimes the bottom line is better too.
Hmm. Let's talk about sort of bottlenecks or trends in the industry. In your business, and you can talk about your specific business if you want, or just kind of the industry at large, where is the biggest bottleneck that sort of shrinks growth for the typical painting business?
Oh, I would say for the typical painting business, it's probably a matter of labor,
Hmm.
of keeping the labor and keeping the labor busy to where they stay with you and not go from company to company working for other painting companies. So I think, I think that's the toughest part, is to just, once you have the team built, to continue to keep the same crews. And that's been key for my industry, where, if I'm working at your house for the third time, I have the same crew back every time. So now you're more comfortable with the crew coming in your house because they've been there before, and you know their names, and you know their personalities and their traits and whatever. So that's kind of probably the biggest bottleneck in our industry, is that. And then, I don't know, trends in our industry are basically color trends, of different paint colors, et cetera. And remodeling trends help us to where, the old, 6 room main floor house is now 3 big open rooms. So that helped us a lot, and not bottlenecked it. It went took us to the next level of, all these remodelers in the trend of having more open spaces. And so there was a lot of remodeling going on and a lot of painting during COVID, where people were like, okay, yeah, our kitchen needs to be bigger. Yeah, we could do this with a dining room. So it was more staying where they were, and converting different rooms into different parts of their life where they could, have more time at home, because that's where people were.
Hmm. You mentioned sort of the struggle of keeping, obviously, labor, getting the labor is an issue, or at least a problem, and it's difficult to do. And an interesting sort of note on that, one of our affiliate partners, he has a staffing agency, and he put it in a great way that I had never thought about before, where he said the labor shortage is not on the actual labor side that most people think of it. It's on the labor that it takes to go and find those people. So the people are
Right.
out there, but
Right.
you might have to go through 5,000 applicants to find the one person, and
Right.
99.9% of people just don't have the labor to do that. So that's
Yeah.
just an interesting note that I heard, where I was like, okay, everybody that I asked this question to kind of says the same thing, but it flipped the script where the labor's out there. It's just finding it that takes the time. And then you mentioned the other part of it, which I think is a little more nuanced, where now that you have the labor, how do you keep them busy? And especially with sort of the seasonality of it. Talk about that a little bit. You have this crew. How do you keep them busy? How does seasonality impact all of that? What's your sort of strategy for that?
Seasonality definitely impacts how busy we are, but the seasons have changed. If you could see now, I mean, we're in Kansas right now, and it's going to be 63 degrees today. I mean, we need 35 degrees and above to paint outside. So the seasons have changed, but there's still seasonality. When it's snowy and rainy and cold and icy outside, my phone does not ring that much,
Mm.
regardless of what time of year it is. If we just have a bad day, it's a slow day on incoming calls. We still have work going on. But then after you do it for a while, you could find what works seasonality, what seasons you could do different things in your industry. Like, so ours, I was at a client's house painting 8 years ago, and she was staying at home with her kids, and she just get given birth to her fifth child. And this was in January. And she said, Frank, when you guys are done working on the inside of my house, can I pay you with a company check instead of a personal check? I said, well, of course you can. I didn't know you had a company. What do you do? She goes, well, we hang exterior Christmas lights on residential houses. I said, well, who does it? She goes, painters that are slow and long landscape companies that are slow. I said, well, can you teach me how to do that? And so she taught my wife and I how to do that 7 years ago. And so with now we're in our seventh year of hanging Christmas lights for our clients. And so that's a seasonal thing that we do for extra money when, it slows down sometimes for painting and sometimes it doesn't. Now it's just an added bonus at the end of the year. We're mid to late October till Thanksgiving. This year we did 150 houses of exterior Christmas lights. So that's something within your industry that you could find. And my guys do all of it. I don't have to find new people. My
Hmm.
painters hang Christmas lights, and we paint all winter long as well. And then we take 2 or 3 weeks off Christmas, New Year's break, and then we're back at it. So the seasons are January's our slowest month, but we're also off for 10 days of it, recharging our batteries and getting ready for the year. And we usually start, mid-January and get going then.
Hmm. What would be something that, let's say somebody's just starting a painting business? What are some of the complexities that you have found? Because when you look at painting, it seems straightforward, right?
Yeah,
It's
everyone could
you're
paint, right?
right.
Everyone knows how to paint.
Everybody knows how to paint. I literally just painted my entire house, every square inch of it. So I can assure you, it's not as easy as one would think.
Not as
Um,
easy to think. You
but
have to have the time as a
exactly,
DIYer.
exactly, a lot of time. What is some complexities though that people looking at the painting industry wouldn't necessarily think about?
That you have to have a relationship with the painting companies. That's how, I mean, that's where it starts. Because if you look at retail paint prices, they're insane. And if you don't have a relationship with Sherwin-Williams or Benjamin Moore, where you have a designated sales rep that's setting your prices and getting you, the prices that you need to be competitive in the marketplace. That's probably where a lot of them fail. They're just having the homeowners buy paint at retail price. So your price, if I gave you a bid on labor only and told you had to buy the paint, your price is way more than all your competitors that have a relationship with the paint company. And that's just a simple little thing that you wouldn't think of. That a painting company has a relationship with a painting company. A really good relationship, and that's where you have to start with, and you got to learn all the products, and you just think you can go paint, and you're buying all the wrong products to put on the walls or the outside, and for all the wrong prices. I mean, there's some gallons of paint that are over $100 a gallon right now. And you charge someone $300 to paint a little room and go spend $165 on paint and $25 on plastic and tape. You don't make any money.
Hmm.
So that's little things that probably if you're on the ladder too much and not doing math very well, you don't know it till you're losing money
Right.
on
Yeah.
each job.
Going back to the last conversation I had, it was the same thing with the epoxy world. I think for trades businesses, I would have to imagine that applies a lot of places where having a relationship with the suppliers allows you on your end, where let's say you get a job and you can go to Sherman Williams, go to Benjamin Moore and get competitive quotes on your end. So you can almost become a competitive quoter on, or sort of a GC, if you will, on your side of the things. And that helps you
Absolutely,
get
for
lower
sure.
prices as well. So love that. I'm curious, um, how do you try to maintain? We kind of talked about it a little bit, but the service at scale, we talked about having the team and having the strong leaders. Would you say the leadership is the key to making sure that the job gets done right? Or is it
Yeah.
kind of a cultural thing, or anything you can speak to on that?
It is the leadership that does it all. And if everyone's involved in the money part too, of like we said before, of getting rid of the butts, then if they're making more money by not having to go back, then everyone's more aware of each job when you leave it, of we're done. If oh my God, if Garrett asked us to come back after we just did all this cleanup and painting, he's got a better eye than us, and that's it right there. Of just making them part of the team of of ownership, take
Hmm.
ownership of it. I mean, it's all of our money. So let's make sure that when we get it done, we get it done.
That's great. That's something I've asked that question a few times. That's definitely something nobody has said yet. So love that. What would you say is the biggest lever that you guys have had for growth? Whether it's marketing, partnerships, sourcing. If you could only focus on sort of pulling one lever, what would you focus on?
Well, that'd be a giving away some secrets too. So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I would say contracts to do painting for property managers.
Mm.
We'll just leave it at that. That's
Well,
been my biggest increaser of within your industry, find a little niche that nobody has.
right,
I
right.
mean, one niche might be painting for schools every summer. It's not a niche of mine, but I do it for 2 or 3 schools every summer, and it ends up being a big contract. And then they start sending your name to other places, and so those are a couple things where if you can get inside to a niche within your industry that not many are thinking of, because most people are thinking of just we're just going to paint the inside and outside of your house, and or inside outside of your bar or restaurant or building or office, and to where if you get 100 different properties managed by one company that's in charge of the property management companies in charge of lawn and landscape, snow removal, paint, lights, mulching, landscaping. That's where you could take it to a different level.
I think
In,
that's, I mean,
in your
I'll put it in my own words, but in general, it's the partnerships that give you, because with service businesses, it's a service business, right? And a
right.
lot of times those are one-off jobs as you're just getting started. And so what I've been hearing is kind of the key is how do you find that person, that partnership, that niche that gives you almost the recurring revenue that sort of a software business benefits from? I think that is something, if you're getting started, something great to focus on. We'll finish up here with sort of what the future looks like for you. I'm curious if you have any, like, what does retirement look like for you? Are you looking to sell, hand it off to someone else? What does the end goal look like?
Yeah, well, the end goal looks good, and the future, near future, looks good, and the fact that my youngest son Josh, who has one more semester of college, has always wanted to join me in Pileggi painting
Mm,
since he was in 8th grade, and kept that thought going through high school. And then I'm like, he was getting ready to go to college. I'm like, you serious? And he said, I'm still serious. So he, like all three of my boys, they always worked for me during high school and college in the summers, but he actually wants to come on board and actually be with me and learn the industry. And so the future, I'm probably more excited than him, because other than being on a ladder, I do everything now. I sell the jobs, I market, I do all the payroll, I produce the jobs, I collect the money. And then so with Josh coming on board, I'll be able to concentrate and focus just on sales. And he will be with the guys. So he will be focusing on keeping teams together, building teams, and producing the job. So if I come to your house, Garrett, and give you a bid to paint the outside, and then I follow up with you and you accept the bid, when we schedule it, Josh and our crew will show up to produce it, and Josh will be there with the guys to finish it. So we pride ourselves on customer service and quality now, with having, you know, an owner at each job as we're finishing will help us as well. And now that he's coming on board and I could just focus on that. I mean, it'll take us again 6 months to a year for him to figure out a system of how it's going to work best and what our strengths and weaknesses are, and that's where we're just going to be. But I might not ever retire now because I don't need to. I might my workload might be cut in half, and my sales probably could increase by 40% over one year, where we're maxed out right now if I don't have help, if I don't have him or someone like him coming on board.
that's
So
awesome.
I'm super excited, and Pledgy Painting is going to be around for a long time, whether I'm around or not, but I'll be around.
That's got to be gratifying.
Yes, I'm super excited, really looking forward to it. And that starts in July 2026. He'll be on board with me.
Fantastic. Well, Frank, where can people find you, and kind of who do you want reaching out to you, whether it's people looking for a job, general contractors, customers, where can they find you, and who do you want to reach out?
I mean, for we do inside and interior, exterior, residential, commercial, Pileggi painting, pileggipainting.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. My phone number's on everything. Josh will be coming on board in July. His phone number will be on everything. We're pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Garrett.
Bye,
Have a good
everybody.
day.